All right, we're back on Top 25 Voter Pod. With me, as always, are Chad Conine and John Werner. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Good, man. Got in pretty late last night, but doing all right.
Good deal. Chad?
Yeah, I'm good. I didn't sleep much last night either, but
Different reason.
Huh?
It's a different reason.
Yeah, well, when you're covering a conference championship game, and then your team plays after that, that's a lot to wind down from.
I hear you.
Well, when I, the fact that I went to an arena where I saw John Denver 44 years ago, I had some Rocky Mountain High, like swimming in my head.
Yeah, but John, you need to be careful. That means something different now.
It's legal in the Rocky Mountains.
I think it probably meant the same thing back then.
All right. Well, we're starting off the rails, but let's talk some Big 12 basketball. So, Chad, after the Baylor women started out 0-2 in the Big 12, Nikki Collins' team turned it around. Ended up clinching a share of the Big 12 championship with a road win at Iowa State yesterday, as we record the podcast Monday night. So you're going to address some of this in a column that you're writing, but what do you feel like has kind of come together for the Baylor women? And do you feel like, they're a threat to make a deep NCAA run?
Well, Nalyssa opened up a little bit. Nalyssa Smith opened up a little bit more last night, maybe than anybody really has, about the process that the players went through when Kim Mulkey left. And then Nikki Collins was hired. And, she said that she and Queen and Caitlin Bickle really, talked about it, prayed about it, things like that. And they decided to stick it out and be here. And she said she really likes the result and she feels like they deserve it. And it's hard to argue that point because, sitting there at 0-2 for whatever reason, I think a lot of people thought that they were really shaky. I think I maintained the whole time that I thought they would have a chance to win the conference when the last couple of weeks of the season rolled around, because they're just too talented of a roster. They're a much more talented roster than anybody else in the Big 12. Iowa State has some nice players, some really good shooters. Texas has some good younger players and a top-notch coach, I think, in Vic Schaefer, although he's kind of been a little bit wobbly lately, a little bit kind of out there some of the time. But anyway, Baylor had the roster all along, and it's not like they were ever playing bad. It's just that they weren't playing great up until, they beat Kansas in that game up at Lawrence Fieldhouse. And then, just started to click. I think beating Iowa State as badly as they did the first time around really helped them build momentum. Now they've won 14 out of 15. And, Nalyssa Smith just almost quietly, although I don't know how you could say scoring 30 points a night and 12 to 15 rebounds. She's always been the same player, but she's moved up to that number one pick spot, in the WNBA mock drafts. And I think probably a lot of women's college basketball was watching that game last night, and she really was impressive. So, Nalyssa choosing to stay, I made the point in the column, she could have been like a lot of these NBA guys and picked her spot and made it a super team, this year. And, she didn't. And she was clearly the MVP of that game last night. I think we had the discussion last week about who the player of the year in the conference is. And I don't think there's any doubt anymore.
No, there is no doubt. I was going to make that point too. She goes for 28 and 20 in a clinching game. And basically they just had no answer for her. She did it in every kind of fashion. She faced up. She occasionally did, some back to the basket stuff. She had a really nice dream shake in the lane. That was sweet. But
well, that's another point that I made in the column is that the NBA, I mean, the ESPN announcers want to talk about how, she could play any position on the floor and she's expanded her game. And that's a nice compliment. And it's true to a certain extent. But what Nalyssa has been this year for Baylor is what Baylor needs her to be, which is her kind of like Nalyssa Smith as a post player, a face to the basket post player, but also a lot of times, sometimes a back to the basket post player,
You did sort of gloss over or miss part of that question, which was, what are they going to do in the tournament?
Oh, how far in the tournament? Well, I'll put it this way. I've got opening day tickets to the Rangers, which may or may not happen for MLB reasons. But if the MLB gets together, that's on the Thursday that I would be traveling to Minneapolis for the Final Four. And I'm starting to think my chances of going aren't real good.
Yeah, you may be selling those tickets. Let's talk about the Baylor men. John, you were down in Austin yesterday, closing out the drum. The Bears, they've really dealt with, more injuries than most teams are accustomed to. And, certainly injuries that would have crippled a lot of teams, but they come back, they put it together. They beat Kansas on Saturday. 2 days later, they go to Austin. They beat Texas like I said, in a game that was, right there for the Longhorns in terms of emotion and like motivation. They had the payback factor. They had the factor of, this was their last game ever at that arena. So, how has Scott Drew done this? How has he kind of tweaked his rotation and made this work?
Yeah. I think especially after Jonathan Chamo-Chachua went out, he probably had to put his head together with the rest of the coaching staff. How are we going to deal with all this? So what's happened? I think, okay, all 7 guys who play are playing more minutes. Kenjo and Flagler, their roles haven't changed a lot. Flagler's their best outside shooter. Obviously James, assist guy, penetration. Now, Matt Meyer, I think, has made a big adjustment. I think he's going to the boards harder. He's looking for his shot less. And each of the last 2 games, he's only taken 5 shots. But, what he's given them on the boards and playing defense has been really strong. Flo Thamba, he's playing more minutes. He's looking for a shot more. He's even taking some outside shots. And I think he's going at the boards pretty hard for a guy who, really can't get into foul trouble because they don't have anybody else like that. He got 4 fouls. No, wait, he had 3 yesterday, but he played pretty carefully after he got a few fouls. Kendall Brown he's getting more confidence in his outside shot. He's helped, a little bit out there by hitting some threes lately. And of course he can do everything else. He's the best athlete on the team. And Jeremy Sohan has been a major key. I mean, he's playing the 5 now some, but he's also playing the 3 and the 4 and the 2 and the 1. He'll bring the ball up sometimes and kind of act as a point guard.
Yeah.
I mean, his versatility is a real key to this team, especially now with the injuries they've had.
Scouts are taking notice too on Sohan. I agree with you on a lot of those points. I think Sohan has sort of been the X factor, and certainly they've been going with the flow there in the front court. He has stepped up his game. You guys know that obviously I'm a Houston Rockets fan, and so one of the Twitter feeds that I follow is this Clutch City. It's a fan site. And they do a lot of, scouting of guys that might, end up on the Rockets or whatever, guys that could fall in that draft position. Well, the Rockets are going to have a lottery pick. And the other day they had a tweet and it was taking highlights from Sohan against Kansas. And they were saying, I think this guy's played his way into the lottery. And that's pretty high praise. I mean, we actually, thought that Kendall Brown and Sohan would probably be one and done type guys anyway. I mean, they're that good. But I do think that Kendall Brown, I feel like still needs to elevate maybe another level or two, whereas Sohan's doing it. As
Right.
you mentioned, I mean, he has been leading the break. He's been doing, a lot of different things, and he's going to make himself some money.
Yeah. Another thing I'll add, Scott Drew's the most optimistic guy in the world. When you have a situation like this, where you have so many guys out, you need that positivity. And I think he's really kept his team up and, just thinking, man, we can still do it. And they're projected to be a #1 seed right now.
It's amazing. It's pretty incredible, because it didn't look like that was going to be the trajectory maybe when Everyday John went out. So
Right.
more power to him. So guys, we've talked a lot about kind of where different teams fall in the Big 12 this year. And so I'll phrase this question like this. I play fantasy sports. And a lot of times when you're preparing for a fantasy draft, you break guys down into tiers, right? These guys that you'll take at this spot, and then you have another tier down and another tier down. So could we do that with the conference standings to a certain extent? I mean, are there tiers of Big 12 teams, both men and women?
Well, I'll
Right,
jump
Chad.
in on the men on this first, and I'll address the women as well after. But it's funny, the beginning of the conference, if you were to say project the tiers, like you said, for your fantasy team, you just said Iowa State, Oklahoma, had a shot at being top tier. And at this point, I mean, Iowa State's kind of played its way onto the bubble, I think. They're probably a tournament team. Oklahoma's gone the other direction, but I mean, I don't think there's any question that Kansas, Baylor, and Texas Tech are, separated themselves in a big way.
Yeah. Johnny?
Right. Yeah. I looked at the standings this morning. Like you said, Kansas, Baylor, Tech, they're up there. Then in the middle, you got Texas, TCU, and Iowa State. And then you kind of have the rest of them. And I think those top 6 will make it. I don't think those last 4 will make the tournament. And, to me, Oklahoma's really probably dropped the most. And probably TCU has improved the most, late in the year. So, but yeah, there's definitely a tier system there now.
When the Big 12 sheds itself of, those sorry Sooners and Longhorns, I mean, just imagine the tiers then with Cincy and Houston and, some programs that have done well in basketball in recent years.
Well,
Exactly.
Houston, if Houston were in there this year, I think their quad 1 record is like 0-3.
Mm-hmm.
And yet their net ranking is still really high right now. So they would be a real interesting team to have in the Big 12 mix this year.
Yeah.
And John, I think I saw a stat where Baylor leads the country in quad 1 wins.
Yeah, I believe it's 12 now.
Wow, it's impressive.
That's almost half their wins.
Yeah, Baylor, Tech, and Kansas, they're going to be 1, 2, or 3 seeds. I mean, and really, 1 or 2 sounds about right. I mean, they're all playing well. So how about the women?
Okay, so I think it breaks down equally well, although there's maybe a little bit more of a gray area with Kansas State. Where are they now? I mean, they're a little bit like Oklahoma, and they faded from where they were in the first, maybe third of conference. But Baylor is starting to look like maybe a potential 1 seed. If they finish out with the Big 12 tournament championship, especially, and one of those ACC teams knocks each other off or loses early in the ACC tournament, although I kind of think conference tournaments aren't considered real valuable by the committee. But then, you got Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and Texas still there, kind of in the top tier on the women's side. And I think all four of those are clearly tournament teams, and then throw in Kansas as a fifth one. Wait, is that right? That's five, right? Am I counting correctly?
Mhm.
And I think Kansas State still has a chance maybe to get in there. Right now, so Kansas State's net ranking is 35. They are currently 18-10. So yeah, they probably got a pretty good chance. I'm not sure who their last couple of games are against, although I don't think they're against either Iowa State or Baylor. So getting to 20 wins, with on the weekend and then the first round of the tournament could really help them. And that's 6 Big 12 tournament teams, and that's a lot more than the women have had lately.
Here's what helps K-State in terms of getting in: Ayoka Lee, having that player on your team. I think the committee likes to have big name players. Yeah, it's the same on the men. We saw it last year. Wasn't Oklahoma State last year on the men's side kind of a bubble team? They got in because of Cade Cunningham. People wanted to see what Cade Cunningham would do.
Now, while we're talking about the human element to the selection committee, let's talk about something that piqued my interest last night. Bryce, I think you saw this. The NCAA reveal had Baylor going to Wichita, right, as the number 2 seed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They had LSU going to Spokane as the number 2 seed. Now, can't we find a way to make those different seeds and so they can be in the same region? Because I don't think America wants to wait to the Final Four to see Kim Mulkey and Baylor. We don't want to take that chance, right?
So I was at Baylor Ballpark recently and talking with Mac Rhodes, just kind of in the hallway, and we were talking about different things. And at one point, we started talking about the Baylor women and the job that Nikki was doing with them, and so forth and so on. And I actually told Mac, I said, I may be the only one. I doubt that I'm the only one, but I really, really want to see Baylor and LSU in the same bracket. And Mac, maybe I'm ratting him out here, but he said, yeah, I'd like to see that too. So I think it's a thing, let's create some drama. This is the kind of exciting stuff that people tune in for.
It would be the most viewed
Chad,
game
you
in the
mentioned
women's
the
basketball
ratings
tournament.
thing. What'd you say,
John? What were you saying?
Yeah, it'd be the most viewed game in the women's tournament for sure.
Easily.
It'd definitely be the most viewed game in the tournament in McLennan County.
Yeah, and I guess some Baylor fans would probably have to show their cards a little bit. Are you a Baylor fan or are you a Kim fan?
There you go.
So anyway, let's close off with this. We had just bananas Saturday in college basketball. 7 out of the top 10 went down, including 1 through 6. Now, obviously, I think all of those were on the road. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So that plays a factor. It's harder to win on the road.
Not only that, probably if I had to guess, and I haven't looked this up specifically, but I know it's true in at least several of the cases. You're talking about a team that lost on the road at that top ranked team's place the first time around conference, right? So they get to scout how they lost that game, then come home and play them again at the end of February. And that's sort of a recipe for a win against the top 10, right?
Well, and that's kind of my question. What do you guys attribute this to? Is it, as Chad said, just knowing the team a little bit better? The second time?
I think so. I think they got a better scout on them. And like Chad said, they've probably got some motivation because they lost the first game on the road to the other team. And, there's just a lot of parity, I think with the transfer portal, teams are getting stronger in the power conferences. You see a lot more veterans. You're not seeing a whole lot of freshmen across the board. You're seeing guys who are in 4th, 5th, some 6th year guys. So I think that's part of it too.
Certainly benefited the Baylor Bears, who went from 10 to 3 in the poll. That is a jump you don't see a lot late in the year.
Oh gosh, no, most years, they get a big win like they did against Kansas. They probably would have maybe moved up 2 or 3 spots.
Mm-hmm.
7 was crazy.
It was crazy.
They kind of remind me of, I think it was John Lovitz in the film The Wedding Singer.
Uh-huh.
And he's like another wedding singer, and Adam
Sandler.
Adam Sandler's character is starting to like come unhinged, and John Lovett's character goes, he's losing his mind and I'm reaping all the benefits.
Yeah.
My evil plan is coming together.
7 of the top 9 lose, and Baylor, which Baylor has done a fantastic job of keeping afloat here and not sinking back to like, 3rd or 4th or 5th in the conference, right?
Yeah.
But for them to jump to 10 to 3 based on beating Kansas on your home floor, and when look at how many teams beat a top 10 team on their home floor, Michigan State did it, TCU did it, St. Mary's did it. I mean, but that's what happens. And John and I both vote, and I make my markings here and there, and I go, well, this team's got to go up, this team's got to go down. And when 7 teams have to go down, theoretically, somebody's got to go up that much. And that's what Baylor did.
It is a perfect storm for them.
It really was. Yeah. But I will also say the point that you make, John, about parity is a fair one. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but what is Baylor's record now? 23-5?
25-5.
25-5. They have 5 losses, and we're sitting here talking about them potentially being a 1 seed. And I think that speaks to, because that's not necessarily normal either. But usually the 1 seeds are like, 28-2 or something like that. But I just feel like, nowadays teams are going to lose a few more games. So,
right.
I mean, maybe Gonzaga is the exception. Last year they were rolling along pretty well, but
even Gonzaga,
right? They fell Saturday.
Yeah, and they've got 3 losses, right? They had 2 in non-conference, and now they lost to St. Mary's. So,
yeah, and I think I saw a tweet that said, Gonzaga is going to go 4-3 against ranked teams and end up being a 1 seed. And it was a little bit of a dig at Gonzaga, but 4-3.
Well, really, I mean,
it's not that bad.
How do you evaluate? Because I'll be, I'll show I'll pull the curtain back a little bit on what I'm thinking and how I think about things, and my bias toward Texas Tech. I'll just go ahead and admit it. But if you go win by win, like quality win by win, I feel like I could make the argument Texas Tech has a better resume than Baylor, even though they're going to finish 1 spot back in the standings. And have fewer overall wins and fewer conference wins. Their wins, and honestly, I mean, Texas Tech is an Obagi 3-pointer in overtime away from having swept Kansas and Baylor and being in first place right now, despite losing on the road at TCU and at Kansas State.
Yeah, and the point you make about I think who you are, your brand name, that plays into the human element of all of this for voters and for the committee. And I saw the other day where Scott Van Pelt on SportsCenter put up basically the resumes of 3 men's basketball teams, and one of them was North Carolina. I can't remember, is Kentucky sort of middle of the road this year?
Oh, they're good.
Okay, they're good.
They're
I can't remember.
Yeah.
The other one was another blue blood. And the third one was TCU. Okay. And TCU, if you just kind of took their resume and like who they've beaten and stuff, theirs was as impressive as North Carolina and this other team that I can't remember, but it was a blue blood, maybe it was UCLA or somebody, but
Michigan.
It might have been. Anyway, the point is, when you strip everything away and you just look at the resumes, I think the bracket comes out a lot different.
Mhm.
And I'll make another point about that from the Baylor Texas Tech perspective. And, congratulations to Baylor for sweeping Chris Beard for the 3rd straight season, by the way. I'll just go ahead and offer that up. But Baylor is going to get the Fort Worth, the San Antonio route, probably, right? And I'm sure they'll sell a lot of tickets to Baylor folks. But it's nothing like the sea of red that they would have if they put Texas Tech in the Fort Worth to San Antonio.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, it speaks to the size of the schools and the size of the fan bases. I mean, Baylor's not quite as big, but they did show out that time they were in the Elite Eight in Houston. That was that was pretty incredible, honestly.
Well, go look at how Texas Tech fans showed up in Minneapolis at Final Four and Anaheim, that year, and Austin this year, right? And just imagine what kind of crowd they might have at the Alamo Dome. But hopefully I can stir the pot and get us a few more viewers here with that.
Well, please join us again next week on Red Raider Weekly as we break down the specifics of what's his name, O'Bannon shot. Anyway, all right, good stuff. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Hope y'all enjoyed it.